Hello, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Trustees of Osgood Hill for Thursday, December 10th, 2020. We are holding this remotely due to, of course, the situation with COVID-19. So I'm going to read this statement at the top of our agenda. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. General Laws, Section C-30A, subsection 18. And the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Trustees of Osgood Hill will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning in to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28, or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after this meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to me. That's dbrown@northandoverma.gov. That's dbrown@northandoverma.gov. And the comment or question will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. So I'll periodically check my email to see if emails have come in with questions, and I will get it going right now. All right. 1 second while I go to the correct email address. There we go. All right. So first item on our agenda is, well, we got a roll call. So please verbally respond that you're present. Robin Ellington.
I'm
Thank you.
here.
You're here. Good. Thomas Dugan.
Here.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Jerry Justin.
Present.
Thank you. And I'm David Brown, and I'm present as well. Gina's not on yet. I don't see her. Gina, are you there? No. But we do have a quorum with 4 members present. We also have with us the director of the estate, Joanna Contine. Hi, Joanna. Say hi. Make sure we can hear you. You're still muted, Joanna. Oh, while Joanna is working on that, Andrew Shapiro is
Hi,
also.
everybody. Sorry.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you. All right. First item of business is to approve the previous minutes from October. We did not meet in November due to a lack of a quorum. So, Jerry, do you want to take it from here?
So this is Jerry. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes from the Trustees of Osgood Hill meeting of October 20th as written.
And I'll second it. Dave seconds it. Any other discussion on those minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Verbal approval. Robin?
Aye.
Thomas?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
And myself, Dave, aye. It's passed. Okay, now we will move to the chairman's update. All right, I have a lot of things to share. So first of all, actually breaking news. Do that first. I received an email from the select board, Laura Bates of the select board, in response to an email I had sent her and to Phil DeCollegiero, who are the nominating committee for members to committees of the town, and asking about how to accelerate getting new members on our committee. And she responded today with a message to me saying that she has 2 people that have expressed interest and they are setting up interviews.
Is it just me? I'm getting interference. Can everybody else hear Dave? You can. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
I
I'm
can
having
hear him.
troubles. I'm having
I can
trouble
hear him.
then.
So Robin, I think there's a way to dial in by phone.
Wow. I wonder if it's my ear pods.
Yeah, I mean, we hear you okay. You're a little bit quiet, but
Not my ear pods. I'm going to sign out and come back in.
all right, give you a minute to do that.
I don't think I've ever left a meeting first.
You're still with us.
And now the interference is gone.
All right, well then stay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry,
So what I was saying was, sorry, Gina's asking me for the link. Give me a minute. Let me respond.
Do you want me to email it to her while you're talking, Dave?
That would be awesome, please. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Tell her, you can tell her. I guess she'll have to.
Okay.
I just want to make sure she's looking at her email.
Andrew will email you the link. Voice texting. So anyway, what I was saying, Robin, is that Laura Bates responded to my email request about getting new members, and said that they do have 2 people interested, and they're working on it. She and Phil DeCollegiero are the subset of the select board that are responsible for that, and they're going to be setting up interviews shortly. So hopefully, we'll have 2 new members. I hope by January. So that's good.
Yeah.
So that's one item of breaking news. Second item of breaking news is that I received this email I want to read to everybody from the town manager, Melissa Rodriguez. It says, "Dear trustees, thank you for your patience as we tread through these truly unprecedented times. Last week, the Board of Selectmen voted to make the transfer from the stabilization account, and DOR moved forward with the certification of our tax rate. We are working internally on our plans moving forward, and I will update you once those are finalized. Thank you." Oh, sorry. Next year's budget will be tricky, to say the least. Of course, the subject of our meeting tonight, right? Thank you for your understanding. Best, Melissa. So I believe she's referring to Monday's select meeting where they approved going forward with her proposal. Andrew, I'm correct, right? I only listened in last Thursday. I couldn't make it this couple of days ago.
Yes, you're
Yes.
correct.
Okay. All right. So that's that. Back to the agenda now. As we did not have, so I'm talking about item 3A now. As we did not have a quorum last month, we did not have an opportunity as a board to select someone to serve as the reviewer of the RFP. So by default, it became me. So I have it, not completed reviewing it, but I believe I have another week before Melissa's expecting that. By the way, let the record show that Jean has joined us. Hello, Jean. Okay. But I will, and to the extent that I can, I'll, keep everybody up to date on that. But the RFP I'm referring to, of course, is for a nonprofit organization to manage the estate. So she has asked that we, as a board, place someone on her. She didn't really call it a committee, but on the group of people who are reviewing the RFP before it goes out. So what I'm saying is I'm the de facto choice because we could not meet as a board to select anybody. If anybody wants to change that, feel free to make a motion. But otherwise, I'll continue to do that.
I wouldn't mind volunteer myself. If you want? Can I make a motion to put myself? I'll take that from you and review it.
Okay. Do you mean in addition to me or instead of me?
Whichever you prefer. That
At
could
this
be
point, I prefer it be in addition. I don't know if, you know,
addition is fine.
what's that?
Addition to is fine. It's up to you.
Okay. I suppose I'm just thinking the reason I'm hesitant is I'm just not sure if what the guidance would be there. So let's do it this way. We can take a vote on that. I don't know if I'll have to ask Melissa if it's okay. I just don't know for our two of us to do it. I don't see why she'd care, but whatever. She had asked me for a name. I had to supply a name by the time before today, well before today. So, do you want to make a motion?
Me or is someone else?
Anybody?
I can
Anybody
make a motion to volunteer if you would like somebody to collaborate with you on that.
Okay. Second.
Aye.
Okay. Let's vote. Robin,
I vote aye.
Tom,
Aye. Sorry,
Okay.
technical
Jerry?
difficulties.
Aye.
okay, and I'm in favor as well. And Jean, sorry.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So I'll take that action to make sure it's all right. And if it is, I'll share that material. Okay. That's part A. Part B. So Robin, myself, and Jerry met with the State Department of Local Services, which is a section of the Department of Revenue, with a nice lady named Marcia Bohinc, Bohinc. And there was another gentleman there whose name I don't recall. Derry, do you remember?
I got it written down. Frank.
Yeah, I don't remember his last name.
I didn't write down his last name.
Yeah, I don't know but in any event, we met with these two people.
Frank Gervasio. Sorry.
Gervasio, thank you. We met with them, kind of gave them our view, as board members of the situation with the estate and the history of the past year and a half, approximately. Now, what I have on the agenda here is we had initially asked that the town, this board voted to request a forensic audit. I had been under the impression prior to the meeting with Marcia and Frank that that's what they were doing. But they made it pretty clear in the discussion with us that that is not what they were doing, and that they were doing a review of the situation, for lack of a better word, but it was not I specifically remember hearing her say it was not a forensic audit. So we as a board have previously requested that. I'll note that I don't know how it would get paid for, because we as a board do not have the ability to spend money. But nonetheless, that was our vote. So what I'm asking you, my fellow board members, for some direction here as to whether we should be continuing to press for that, or whether we want to wait for the findings that Marcia and Frank come up with, or whether that would sort of be a second option. And the third option would be to just continue to actively press for a formal forensic audit. So
let me just, so this Jerry, let me add to it. So we did share a lot of information with them. I know I shared the list of questions, not the 1 through 23, the infamous 1 through 23, but the questions that we sent to the town manager basically was what's some compilation of the 1 through 23. So I provided that. There were other documents that were provided to them. I don't know, Robin, you and Dave could speak to what else was shared. I don't know if the strategic plan was shared, and there may be some other items that were shared, just to get the rest of the board members up to speed with what documents we provided.
Yeah, I think, Robin, you handed over a bunch of stuff.
So I handed over the questions 1 through 23. I handed over the documentation that was provided in response to our inquiries 1 through 23, and that was on a CD. I provided them a history of the estate, the 1.5 pager that I prepared last spring. And she, as a matter of fact, she said that she was grateful for that because now she didn't have to do that. She had it on her action item list to do that research. And then the rest of it was discussion on when Munis was implemented. And that was at a date prior to anybody else in the room having joined the board. So there's kind of a gap between the Munis implementation and where we are today, because it has presented a lack of transparency and accountability. There's no longer checks and balances as a result. So
Robin, is the history document that you gave them, was it the legislative history or there's a couple of different documents that sort of say history on them? Because Tom had prepared, someone had prepared, I can't even remember, I thought it was Tom, a 2-page document titled legislative history. That's actually a 3-page.
that I did not give them that document.
Okay.
Mine was strictly, from the original town meeting vote to purchase the estate, and from the college and forward.
Okay.
Where we are today.
Okay.
Let's see if this is it.
So I guess, this is Jerry. So I guess just my point of that is that we shared it, even though they said they weren't auditors. We did provide, quite a bit of information to them as, as background, as part of their research or assessment or whatever you want to call it. And I think, my own personal view is we should, and they also identified that probably their report would be done by the end of December, based on what they knew of the work. So my suggestion is that we wait for that report, see what it looks like, and go from there.
Okay. Personally, I agree, but I'm raising it up in case anyone else feels differently and wants to take a different action or wants to propose a different action.
So this is Tom. I would agree with you, Jerry and Dave. I think I've kind of done, in preparation for the budget, I went back and looked back at a bunch of stuff that I've done, and I would like to see DOR's opinion, because there's some inconsistencies that I found between different documents produced by the town and different documents that have been submitted to DOR. And so I would just like to see DOR's analysis of the situation, in particular, to really help us understand what the fund balance is, which I think this group calls the retained earnings, but those two things could be the same, to kind of get a good sense of what that is.
Right.
I will, I've had some conversations with DOR because I've had some technical questions about reports that have been submitted by the state, and just making sure I'm reading things that are right. Things that have been submitted to the state, I'm sorry. So I think we should give DOR a chance to finish that up and kind of bring back some of their comments and questions.
All right. That sounds good. I mean, I'll add the comment that this has been a long-standing piece of frustration for me, that my concern, and I believe I actually stated it this way to Marcia, was that I I just wonder if we can, if the numbers we see as the fund balance, or as you said, is referred to as retained earnings, are they accurate? Can we trust them, or is there it's very, very hard for me, being a non-accounting person, to trace through all these various reports and going back several years to try to figure out if they're accurate. So it would just be helpful as a board and, as your chairman, to understand, is that number right? Are those numbers right? And it would have a material effect on the events that are unfolding now if the number were higher than it appears to be. So it's important that we get to the bottom of that. Anyone else want to comment on that?
This is Tom again. I think that's my exact concern, Dave, is that, I think there's been concerns raised in the past by others of a significantly large number, but I don't think it's there. But I think there's enough questions that I have, and kind of trying to tie out between the various different things, that I want to make sure that the retained earnings or the fund balance is really reflected. And to your point, the fund balance should be cash or cash equivalencies for the estate. So that's really important for us to understand, given that in this business of the enterprise, cash really is king. So DOR does a good job. That is a very strong team at the Division of Local Services. So I think while they may not be doing a forensic audit, I think they will do a lot of really good due diligence and look into this on behalf of the town and the residents.
Okay.
Dave,
Any other? Yes.
I want to let you know, I concur. I agree with everybody on waiting and seeing what the DOR produces for their non-audit, but their review of the whole thing. That's it.
Okay. All right. The next, no other comment. Next item, confirm that our strategic report is posted on the town website. I confirmed that today. It is. One of the members suggested that we add this next sentence. Should we consider sending or drawing the finance committee's attention to it, basically, or any other town official's attention by sending them a copy? Clearly they can get it if they want it. It's there. In fact, it's quite prominent when you go to North Andover MA is it .gov?
Yes.
Yeah, when you go there and you click down to the Stevens estate, it's right there. It's got its own little button on the left, so it's very easy to get to it, and it's definitely there. But one member asked, should we consider, sending a correspondence to the finance committee? I don't know that they've ever looked at it.
So what would be the purpose? I don't know, whoever suggested it, can you enlighten us on, outside of just sending it, what
I honestly don't
what we're
remember.
trying to get out of it?
Yeah, I don't remember who sent it to me.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
talking,
I'm just-
8 weeks ago, we were discussing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't suggest it, but I think there is value to sending it and actually asking to be put on the finance committee agenda to talk about it. Right? They had a very long discussion about the long-term advisory committee's recommendations. If a decision to lease the property goes forward and it goes to town meeting, the finance committee, I think, will have to opine upon it. And they have an obligation to represent an equal balanced view on behalf of the residents of town. Right? They're supposed to be the legislative representatives of all of us town meeting members. So I think it has some value to send it to them, and make a different but complementary perspective. No,
All right.
I don't remember who suggested it, but I think it's a good idea.
So would someone like to move that?
I move that we send our report to the finance committee, and there's a second committee as well. the planning board. No, not the planning board. I had it in that email to you, Dave.
So you were the culprit. I thought it was you.
I was.
Let's see if I can dig that up.
Would it have been in the minutes?
Let's see.
Sorry, I'm a little unprepared today.
I might be able to find it.
Robin, is it the master plan committee?
No.
Master plan? Okay.
The report that we did up and presented to the select board to counter with the to complement counter the long-term planning committee had action items on the last page of that report we submitted, and it's in that. I can't find it right now.
So can we at least, to move this forward, can we at least make continue with the motion for the finance committee, and if we want to even allow other town officials and leave it at Dave's discretion
Sounds good to me.
as a way to kind of amend your, can you just restate your motion? And
I make a motion to send the trustees of Osgood Hills report that was sent to the select board now to the finance committee.
And you also want
it is a partner to the long-term planning committee's report.
and do you also, as Tom suggested, want to request that we present it to them?
Yes, we need to meet with them.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Jean. Jean will second it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. So let's take a roll on Robin's motion. I'll quickly restate it. We will send our strategic report that was previously delivered to the Board of Selectmen to the Finance Committee and request to present it at one of their meetings, upcoming meetings. In favor, so vote aye or nay, as I call you. Robin?
I vote aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Jerry?
aye.
Dave is aye, so also passes unanimously. All right. Next, this is 3D I'm on now, my report, my update. Review and discussion of town manager's recommendations to reduce, possibly suspend state operations as a result of DOR's communications to the town regarding our apparent significant budget shortfall for fiscal year 21. And this is all related to the state certification of the North Andover tax rate. I know this is already sort of slightly old news, but I have to go through it anyway. The state will not certify the rate if any enterprise funds show a significant shortfall. And, obviously there's a lot more detail on this available in the memo that Melissa had sent. The select board took action on Monday to approve that. So here at this meeting, we'll discuss any action we want to take with respect to that situation. So basically, that's as good a summary as I can produce, but essentially this, for anybody not familiar with this is what I was reading Melissa's comment about her email I read earlier this evening, which was basically saying that, here it is, that they would make a transfer from the stabilization account to kind of cover this anticipated shortfall, which may or may not take place. On Monday, the selectmen approved that transfer. Therefore, DOR moved forward and certified North Andover's tax rate. So that's all happened now. When I wrote this agenda, that was pending, right? But as part of the memo that town manager sent, there'll be at least curtailed operations, meaning Joanna's hours devoted to the Stevens estate will be reduced at a minimum. So that's very pertinent to tonight's meeting, because we're going to be discussing our input for a budget, and obviously how much time she has available for the estate has an impact on that. So I just want to open it up for discussion on that. And maybe we should start by, Joanna, maybe you should give us the latest, or Andrew, one of you should give us sort of the latest of where that's all at.
Yeah, do
Okay.
you want to go ahead, Andrew?
No, go ahead, Joanna. No, go ahead.
I had Melissa called me briefly. She was trying to respond to my email, but my email was down. She called me briefly and she said that she's working on, she received, I basically sent Jerry, Andrew, and CC'd Melissa on a breakdown of why I believe it was justifiable to ask for a minimum of 11 hours per week, because I broke down, I'll be happy to send everybody a copy of this. I broke down the sales process and how long it takes to take a tour and how many tours I would have. So basically, it looks like we're going to stick with the 5 hours, but Melissa hasn't finished doing the calculations. She's going to move the rest of my hours to another department in town where they need help, specifically, which would ease the cost burden on the Stevens estate by my salary for 14 weeks, to the tune of a few $1,000s. So I can't anticipate dropping inquiries and not responding to phone calls and emails and things like that over that time. So it's going to be a juggling situation, but I trust Melissa. She said she's still working out the calculations, but I trust her to take these considerations in mind. And hopefully we'll hear from her. And then Andrew, if you've got anything different or anything extra to add, please go ahead.
No, I think you summed it up well, Joanna. And I mean, I think the only thing I would add is that I think Melissa and I need to sit down with Joanna and our town accountant just to, come up with a workable budget for next fiscal year. And we'll seek to do that in the next week.
So in order to be efficient and effective with our time tonight, Andrew, Jerry prepared, and he's going to be presenting some slides on what we were going to work on a recommendation for you. This probably has some impact on what Jerry prepared. Maybe it's not that great an impact, but I guess my question is, should we assume that that basically Joanna will have about 5 hours to devote to the estate for the next 14 weeks, and that no other time will be spent on sales and things like that?
In a manner of speaking, yes.
Okay.
But there's flexibility in that. So it's not like, so that 5 hours could be 10 hours one week and no hours the next week. It can be distributed in different ways. It's not like a hard cutoff of 5 hours.
Okay.
And I know that, the town manager is eager to be flexible and work with Joanna on ensuring that, that there's a public-facing presence for the Stevens estate. There's not a significant drop-off there that's going to be detrimental to the estate in terms of being able to respond to inquiries, work with customers, work with the public. We're not, it's a difficult and precarious situation, but I think it's one where the town manager is doing everything she can to make it workable in every way, shape, and form.
Okay. Well, I think just it's good for everybody to be aware of this as we discuss but basically the main part of tonight's meeting was to try to get a budget proposal together, our recommendation as a board to you. So to the extent we may have to modify that on the fly tonight, Jerry, that it's good for the board members to understand the exact situation we're in at the moment. That was my point.
Understood. And I do apologize because I know it's, we're trying to in some senses build a plane while we're flying it. It's a little bit of a moving situation or a fluid situation. So I can understand if there's any frustration or a little bit of ambivalent or a little bit of feeling like we're in a vague situation, because I feel in some senses the same way, and I'm trying to work with the town manager to make sure that we put forth a responsible budget that responds to what DLS said and is workable to help ensure that the state's in the best possible situation it can be in going into FY22 and through the remainder of FY21.
Yep.
So
Okay.
this is Jerry. So I think of this a little bit more pragmatically. So the current issue is really around the fiscal 21 budget, right? And the impact of a potential shortage of, revenue because of COVID and offsetting expenses. So I think it's incumbent on the town, and I commented on this at the select board meeting on Monday, that Andrew, working with Joanna, working with the town manager, working with the town accountant, map out what is their analysis of to try to project between where we are today and where we think we're going to be in June, from a revenue perspective, from an expense perspective, what assumptions are behind that, and the assumptions around, maybe Joanna's hour, whatever they are, and then potentially any impact to fiscal 22. That I think it's incumbent on the town to provide that information back to the board, so that this board, so we're going to try to figure it out on our own, because it is ambiguous, and I think to some degree, but I think it's incumbent on the town that has a lot of information at its disposal to provide that back to the board. The reason I say that is because we as a board have been dealing with different forecasts and different stories between what Joanna reports to this board and what the town accountant presents in her reports. And I don't want that disconnect or lack of alignment or whatever, or confusion as we think about fiscal 21. There should be one story. It should be pretty clear and straightforward that it's foundational in whatever the revenue projections are, the expense projections. I mean, I've already heard, they're projecting, I think, $212,000 of expense, this fiscal year. Not sure where that number came from, but I think we need to see that. And then I would say, as far as related to fiscal 22, just bear with me, that I think we can go forward with what we're going to discuss, tonight, assuming let's just assume there's minimal impact. And then based on whatever the report that comes out from the town, if there is an impact, then we're going to have to take that into consideration somewhere, after today, because there may not be any impact. It's hard to tell. But we as a board have to really put the estate, first. And I would argue, at least for tonight, we should say we would expect no impact to fiscal 22 until the town comes back and says it's something different.
Dave, this is Tom. I'd just like to follow up on what Jerry said very eloquently. And I would ask that the town in particular go back to some of the foundational documents of being an enterprise fund, if this is going to be more of an accounting conversation versus a policy conversation. But first and foremost, I think the budget and the 2021 and 2022 has to be described on some level of service. So, Andrew, to your point about how many hours is Joanna going to have to dedicate to the estate, really drives that level of service, right? And what the level of user fees would be, and what the level of user or resident engagement with the estate is from an active or a passive recreational perspective. And to Jerry's point about the estate, I think looking at the expenses, you have personnel, but then you have a lot of, fixed costs, heating, fuel, different things like that. So I think it's incumbent for the town in particular, and with some advice from us, but to really lay out 3 strategies of what does service look like now and for the rest of 2021. knowing that, maybe we won't have vaccines and be back to normal till July. And what does that mean for hosting large events or weddings or other things? And then assuming that things go back to semi-normal by, June or July, what does that mean for 2022 in terms of the level of service that the public is going to see, and what is the revenue associated and cost associated with that, right? So I think it has to be presented that way. And then also, to a subset of that, present the budget with maybe a couple of different assumptions of, is there a subsidy needed from the general fund or other funds? Is there no subsidy? And allow people to see those different options based on that level of service. Because I think, similar to what Jerry said, I'm a little bit confused about where some of those numbers are coming on operating expenses, especially if Joanna's hours are going to go down to 5 hours per week and there's not going to be a lot of events or service at the estate. We're going to effectively mothball it, for all intents and purposes, for the rest of the year. So what does that look like in terms of the, bending the curve on the expense side? And, how does that come together in a cohesive package?
Okay. So I think I was struggling to capture everything that Jerry and Tom said, but think, Jerry, as you wrap up your presentation, maybe we can coalesce on a statement or two to make sure it's clear to Andrew and Melissa what we're asking them for to come back with. Okay.
Can I ask a question as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Jean. Sure.
What is the select board's timeline for putting out this RFP? And if so, is this conversation all for naught if it's going to be leased out? How much impact are we going to have on the budget, or how much even do we need to do for it?
So there's two things there. I'm looking for it to see if it has a timeline on it. Unless you know off the top of your head.
The timeline is it will be released, shortly after the review by yourselves, Jean and you and Dave. And I think there's also going to be a review by a member of the long-term advisory committee. And I don't know if Melissa has engaged them yet on this. She hasn't made me aware if she has. And so I think the idea too is to get it out in such a fashion that there can be action taken at town meeting.
Right. So they would probably, I'm sure, yeah. It doesn't actually say on the draft copy when it would be. It says XXX. So, but I believe she was looking for feedback from us, by the middle of this month, another week or so. And I presume she wanted to get it out. Like as Andrew said, she wanted to have it be able to be actionable at town meeting, right? So that would mean to give people a chance to respond. Prior to that, she'd have to get it out, I would think, by February at the latest. Right? Town meeting's normally in May. It was normally in May.
Right. So that kind of leads to my question. It's usually, something of this size is probably going to be advertised for a month. It take a couple of weeks to evaluate it. So I'm thinking they're going to want to turn it around, or have it decided upon at least by July 1 for the July 1 year, if not. So my question is, like, what kind of budget are we working on if this is going to be leased out? Or are we just worried about the end of fiscal 21?
So the budget that we're supposed to work on. So basically, this is us just taking on the role of advising, right? We're putting together a recommendation, right, to Andrew in his role, and then ultimately to the town of North Andover on what the fiscal 22 budget should be, because that's what they're working on now. It's not our decision, it's their decision. We're giving them input, right? So it's a fiscal 22 budget, and I would assume that, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume you have to proceed as if nothing major is changing, right? Because you don't know that anyone will respond to this RFP. No, maybe nobody responds. And then,
Correct.
right? So Andrew has to, Joanna and Andrew have to prepare a budget, and it has to be ready for town meeting to be approved in the event that the RFP goes nowhere. Yeah, obviously, if the RFP goes somewhere, then things change.
Well, and then, but just to also interject, so even if it does go somewhere, so to speak, as to use the term you use, Dave, there's going to be some lag time between the estate being handed over in terms of its management to another entity. So there's presumably going to be some amount of time where that the budget that is collectively developed here would be in effect. And it may be for 6 months, it may be for less, it may be for longer. But there's going to be that period of time where just after town meeting, the estate still has to run and operate, and unless someone decides otherwise, and the town has to enter into some sort of formal agreement with that entity that ends up being selected.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. All right. So without further ado, then, item 4 on the agenda we can't do. I have to take some responsibility here that I forgot to ask Andrew to to do this until about 2 hours ago. So we don't have a review.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
a question, just back on
3.
number 3.
Yep.
So is the mechanism to get the fiscal year 21 revenue expense forecast, I'll say, does that come through Andrew back to the board? I don't think it needs a motion because it's a town deliverable, basically. It's just a matter of who's providing it and when, given that the potential mothballing or soft landing is January 10th from what Melissa's memo stated. So
you, just to be clear on the ask, you want you want the town's projection of revenue and expenses for the balance of FY21 with some color on how those figures were arrived at.
correct. And also if there's any impact to fiscal 22 based on Joanna's hours, cutting back hours, whatever it is. And if there is, then we have to deal with it. If not, then one thing we don't have to worry about.
Okay.
So if there's broad agreement, I can just go ahead and pursue getting that for the trustees, and I'll go through the town manager and the town accountant to get that information.
All right. So just let me restate it, Jerry, make sure I got it right. So we are requesting that the town's projections for revenue expenses for the balance of FY21 with some color on how that's determined and any potential impact that has on FY22. Did I get it? All right.
You got it.
How can that be determined without the sales forecast? And the town can't produce a sales forecast.
Well, but with Joanna's input and others.
So on the expense side, so I don't want to step in the role of the town accountant, but in a really raw, in a 50,000 foot view, there's a number of encumbered POs that account for, and Joanna can describe this in better detail than I could, but that account for all the expenses that the state has to deal with for the rest of the year. So that's oil and the oil company, that's electricity, that's phones, that's there had been landscaping and pest control. So there's a number of those contracts that are still outstanding and POs with encumbered amounts. So there's assumptions made as far as, okay, we can run down these POs to zero, expend the entire amount of these contracts. And then there's still money left over, and you can say, we're not going to spend any of that because the town may not approve any additional money being encumbered because of the financial situation. So there's a projection that can be produced based on the encumbered amount of those POs. As far as the sales forecast, I mean, there's the revenue that would come in from any events that are scheduled. So I think, are there any events left for the year, Joanna? I don't know if there are, but I see you're shaking your head no. I know there are events starting in April. So the town can take into consideration any projected revenue that would be coming in from those events.
So you would be using the bookings report?
That's right.
Well, and holidays is still scheduled, right?
That's not
Yes,
revenue
but
generating.
it's not revenue. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
it's not
revenue.
revenue, it's
Right.
your passion and love and blood and
Yeah.
sweat and tears.
So
Okay.
the
But
other
no,
piece that's kind of been brought up is the transfer of unspent capital.
Mhm.
So I would just think it's not really a revenue source per se, but it as a transfer that still affects ultimately the kind of the dollar side of the Stevens estate. So I know that's been kind of batted around. So there's a few elements here, but the bottom line is to really kind of tell the story of ultimately the town expects to get paid back from this transfer of stabilization funds this fiscal year. What's our plan as of December or whatever to get there as best as near as we can tell right now.
And Jerry, it's good you brought up the capital too, because I think that's an important part of this discussion. You know, the capital isn't a revenue, but as the town obligates what is appropriated at town meeting and then obligates contracts, if that money is deobligated, it flows back into the fund balance, right? So those decisions do have a real material impact on the health of the estate and what are the resources there to support Joanna and the mission of the organization, but with a trade-off of either not doing projects or you're curtailing some projects as they go forward. But I think, thank you for bringing that up, because I think that has to be part of the color and the discussion. In particular, what is a project that was completed and brought in under budget versus something that we're actually postponing and deferring and then potentially deobligating the funds back for other purposes.
I'm just was quickly scanning Melissa's memo. I'm trying to remember, Jerry. One of the last things you said was how does the town plan to reimburse it? You're also asking Andrew to report back to us how does the town plan to reimburse itself, i.e., the stabilization fund, by the end of fiscal 21. Is that what she proposed by the end of fiscal 21? I can't remember.
Well, the stabilization fund transfer is really it's a mitigation, right?
Right.
Of a potential deficit that the current retained earnings could not fulfill.
Right.
And what we don't know is so 300,000 was approved in the transfer of stabilization funds. But based on what Melissa said, she doesn't believe it's going to be 300,000. It's going to be something less than that. She threw out the number 212,000 at the select board meeting on Monday. I'm not sure what that's based on. Obviously, she's got some information that does that. So if indeed, that's the number that's got some basis around it, if we get the revenues to a point where it's at that number or above, obviously, then we don't need to expend, we may not have to transfer, capital dollars over or do some other things that I think are kind of sequential steps along the way. Okay, if there's a projected shortage, the first step you're going to do is this. And then if that doesn't get you all the way there, then you got to do this. So
Right.
I think it's more
So you just
a
asked
sequential set of decisions versus like one decision. I guess is
Okay.
my point. So
can I restate just to make sure? So you're just asking them to inform us about what their plan is to do that
correct?
based on what
Yep.
they know today.
Yep.
Okay. Just so I'm clear, and Andrew, you're clear on what the ask is.
Did I kind of state it clearly enough, Andrew? You good at restating things. So.
All right.
No, I think you did a good job.
All right. Yeah, I'm not always clear, so thank you.
Right. And I get it now too. So if I get it, everybody should get it. All right. So I think we are done with, unless anyone else has a comment, we're done with 3. We're gonna skip 4, although Andrew, if you'd be kind enough to obtain that snapshot of what we think, what Lynn's calculation of Stevens Estate RE is as close to today as you can, if you could supply that to us by email.
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. So let's move on to number 5, which was what we would really the meat of tonight's meeting was supposed to be. And Jerry, I'm going to hand it over to you. Jerry and Joanna have worked on this, and I think, can you post this or present the slides, Jerry? If not, I could. Here we go. You lost your audio.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So just as a little bit of background, can everybody see that, the presentation?
Yep, it's a little small. I don't know if you can make it bigger, but there you go.
How's that? Okay.
Yeah, better.
So just as a little bit of background, as we kind of talked about at the meeting where we didn't have the quorum back in November. So I took the action item to follow up with Joanna and start to put together the board's view of what a fiscal 22 budget might look like. And I'll say this, I think it generally aligns. Joanna and I met a couple of times and kind of went back and forth via email as well to try to bring this together. But I think I would say before the whole FY21, the more recent issue and item number 3 came up, I would say Joanna and I seemed to be pretty well aligned on the thinking, particularly around expenses, and obviously there's some assumptions around revenue. So, so this is certainly, consider this a draft. Hopefully it gets us, a lot of the way there, but it would appreciate any feedback as well. So on slide 2, just usually when I do budget kind of stuff, just what are we trying to do? Basically, what's the objective? And I certainly relied on our strategic plan as the source of information, but certainly preserving the historical character, investing some resources in sales and marketing, resource in administration and finance, and then kind of I call it budget prudence, to make sure, obviously, as we're dealing with kind of minimal retained earnings, that we're able to manage that and try to get to a better position as in a going forward state. Okay, so slide 3, this really isn't fiscal 22, but it kind of helps set the stage for fiscal 22, because as I was talking to Joanna about capital, and while there's no capital requests, no new requests in fiscal 22, there are current activities that are currently approved, appropriated, budgeted, that are ongoing. And I got the Muni's report detail. I think I got that from Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. But it shows all the approved projects. The project numbers are here, what the appropriation was, how much has been spent as of 3 weeks ago, probably, how much is being encumbered and how much is left, and whether it's active or not. So we've got 3 active projects around the main house, and well, say the main house, and then there's the second piece, I guess, of the boiler, which is slated for spring 2021. And then there's a couple of other CPA funded capital projects. One is inactive, the restoration of the paintings inactive because the CPA, the Community Preservation Committee or Act or whatever, declined. But the lighting one is active. So this gives folks a sense of where the current capital projects are at. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question
Sure.
about that?
Yeah.
So when we look at town reports, and Andrew, thank you for sending me that capital file as well. Do the CPA projects show up under the CPA, or do they show up under the the Stevens estate? Like, where would I find those projects, I guess?
I think it ends up under CPA. Joanna, do you know offhand?
Yeah, if you're talking about in the accounting system in Munis, it is listed as an account in Munis, but it is listed as a CPA account.
So they would show up when we look at like the town budget and the cap, not from an accounting perspective, but just from the budget perspective. They
You
would
mean
show up
this?
more in the CPA section.
So this is what I refer to. This is a Munis report.
Yeah. Okay.
But it should be.
But they would generally show up in the budget under the CPA then. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing, Jerry?
Absolutely.
So we were approved for the on that last column for the gas and electric lighting restoration. This we were planning to do in the upcoming winter of 2021. But because we are requiring repair and maintenance funds to the tune of about $10,000 to actually do the wiring, so to detach these historic fixtures and then rewire and attach them again. Nothing to do with the pieces. The pieces themselves, the light fixtures and the chandeliers, are part of that 38,000. So we've had to put that on hold because of the spending freeze, and that was just in the past few days, I believe.
I'll just update this to on hold.
Yeah. So that was since our
That's
last
fine.
meeting, Jerry.
Yep. No, that's okay.
It's on hold due to a town-wide spending freeze, Joanna?
Yeah. So it's a town-wide spending freeze, but it was still part of our repair and maintenance operating budget to have the actual electrical work done. So it kind of falls into that, and especially with the latest DOR situation.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to spend $10,000 on repair and maintenance.
Okay. If you're not going to do the rest of it.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
would otherwise be a great time, because if we're closing January, February, March, it would be a good time to do the light fixtures, but this is what it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So was there another question? Okay. So just as I said, there's no proposed capital, no new projects planned for fiscal 22. So, so we spent quite a bit of time, Joanna and I, kind of working through the personnel piece, and I'll try to walk you through it. This format follows kind of what was done in prior budgets, where you basically take the title of the position, what's the FY 21 budget, and this is budget, not necessarily actual headcount on site, but what the budget is, what's proposed for fiscal 22, what the variance is, and such. So, okay. So obviously the director is here, proposing her to keep her there. The event bar manager, this was a plan to be a full-time position. We've hired a part-time person, Humera, right? So she's in the part-time bucket, the next slide. So basically this event bar manager, a full-time position, is not required for fiscal 22, and that was confirmed with Joanna. So that basically is -1, at least for this template. The admin assistant was 0.3. That was the town, basically the town services that was allocated at 0.3. That also goes away and moves part-time. So essentially the full-time personnel staff positions is essentially one person, Joanna. Okay, so that's ultimately it's a decrease from the budget of staff positions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If her full-time equivalent, her FTE, is moved down to, say, if she's only doing 5 hours a week, do you still count it as one? Or because half of her, or more than half of her salary then should be allocated elsewhere? So would it be a full 1.0 FTE if she's only putting in 5% time to the Stevens estate. I know this is, yeah.
That'd be so that would be the actuals. So the budget would be 1.
Mhm.
The costs, I'm assuming the costs, if, if it's, I'll just call it, she's spending 25% of her time at the estate and 75% with the town. 75% of her salary would be allocated to whatever the department is that she's working for, and wouldn't show up at the estate, charged to the estate. In fiscal 21, this is a budget number here.
Right.
You're asking about kind of the actual logistics, right?
Well, I was more
So-
for thinking of fiscal 22. I mean, are we just
Oh.
anticipating that she's going to be back to a 1.0?
Well, you're anticipating at some point she's back to a 1.0. So this budget was drafted, right, Jerry, in advance of that news. But even notwithstanding that news, that would impact this. Again, that's actuals. This is a budget. We have to work on a budget. So unless we want to budget, that was my question at the beginning of the meeting to Andrew, actually, was should we budget assuming that's going to happen, in which case these numbers would change a little bit, right?
And for fiscal 21, couldn't we then reduce the encumbrance of her salary because it's going to be allocated elsewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that would be all part of the analysis of addressing the fiscal 21 potential gap, right? But I think from a budget perspective, I would speaking as a member of the board, I would certainly expect her to be back full time
by July 1st.
fiscal 22. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind, right, that this wouldn't start till July 1, 21, right? So by then she's anticipated to be back full time. So it would be exactly what this budget would be correct. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that's at the moment we anticipate that, right? So.
And that's what we would recommend, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Set the estate up for success. This is a proposal. Obviously, the department and the town's ultimately going to make the final decision. But
okay.
But Gene, did you get your question answered? And I'm not sure you did. So just want to make sure. Maybe Andrew can speak to it, or
no, that's fine. I guess I'm off in a different direction, so that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Sure.
Well, no, my quick add is just that I didn't disagree with what Jerry was saying, how I think, this is the proposed, and then something has to be carried forward by the town manager, and something then has to get voted on by a town meeting. So there's the initial budget, there's the town manager's budget, and then there's the town budget. So if it's decided that Joanna's going to split her time in such a way, and you gave the example, Jerry, 75% with the town, then this would look differently. And yes, it might be, whatever it is, 0.25 as opposed to 1. But I think that just has to be sorted out as we continue through the budget process.
Right. And as of this moment in time, right, we're certainly hoping, I think all of us, that by July 1, we're back to something like normal. And Joanna would be full-time back at the estate. So go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. So then we spent quite a bit of time talking about part-time positions. And I'll kind of walk you through this, and then Joanna certainly knows it much better than I. But what I was trying to do here was basically show the various positions, and kind of some of the headcount, it varies. It's kind of, say it's event based, like the bartenders in the room setup, is event based. So you can't really put an FT on it per se. But what I did do then is talk to Joanna about, okay, well, by event, roughly how many hours, because these are hourly positions, how many hours are they spending on average? Obviously, some are more time, some are less time, but on average, what does it look like? So you can see the justification column, what the assumption is as far as the hourly rate. This is from a budget perspective now, not necessarily what they're actually being paid. I want to make that clear because some of these are a little bit different. But anyway, you just add this up and you get some annual costs associated with it. Same with the room setup and breakdown, which is a position I guess that Joanna used to have, but doesn't have currently. The allowance for the event manager, which is, as I said, just Humara, and kind of what her annual cost would be expected to be. We talked quite a bit about this marketing and sales associate. Again, this was part of our strategic plan. And in talking to Joanna, it looks like it's about a half-time person, roughly 20 hours a week. And we had some discussion around what the appropriate hourly rate would be for this. Basically, I'll just tell you what I did, very non-scientific. I just went to like Indeed or ZipRecruiter or whatever. They have kind of average salary by, in your area. And so that's where I kind of came up with the $20 an hour on the sales associate and the $15 an hour on the admin. Again, this is budget perspective. So obviously some of this may be less than that, but I want to at least provide visibility to what the assumptions were. And then again, we could change it or not. But at the end of the day, I think the two key pieces that I think align with what the board has been looking for is some increased focus on marketing and sales, and to essentially bring the position that's the town position, you bring that back to the estate on a part-time basis. That's what this admin assistant is. And I also provided just some general, what would the general duties be? So then at the end of the day, there would be no benefits associated with any of these roles. That gets you the $82,382. So I'll just kind of pause there because the personnel piece is a big piece. So questions, comments, changes? Joanna, have anything to add from your point of view?
I don't actually. I think you've covered it all pretty well, Jerry.
Okay. And then subsequently, so Andrew confirmed that there's no planned indirect support charges for fiscal 22. So basically yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay. Now, if we go down to revenue, and this was a tricky part. So I made some assumptions here. Again, we can change the assumption. There's nothing magical about this. But I assume that the restrictions on event attendance at the estate are lifted by the end of March. There still may be some limitation, social distancing, masks, PPE, other kinds of equipment, sanitizer, all those things may still be required, but those all would be available. Really, it's about event attendance because attendance at events really drives, drives revenue basically. So that's one assumption. March 31st, I think we should talk about that. Is that realistic or not? There is a hiring freeze at the town, but what I talked about here was start the hiring process in somewhat similar to what we did with Humara, maybe not exactly, but to some degree, so that we start the hiring process, roughly 2 to 3 months earlier than the onboard date July 2021. You want to start the recruiting, a couple of months earlier. So that's an assumption in here, and that the number of events and revenue generated are in line with the historical. So I've always used fiscal year 16 to 19 as a good kind of target for revenue per event as well as a number of events. Again, that's just my own kind of personal view on it. The board could change it or do something different. And then I noted an upside that I think if COVID restrictions or vaccine or some combination thereof start to dissipate, there's certainly, I believe, an unmet need or unmet demand that's going to come out of that, as well as I think onboarding these staff positions by taking some of the load off of Joanna, I think will pay benefits. So I think there's an upside there. And then the last assumption is just, I think as we had put in the strategic plan that the estate is the preferred venue for town sponsored events. That's low hanging fruit. So if there's revenue to be gained from town sponsored events and meetings, then I think the estate as a preferred venue would be a great way to generate some revenue.
So I have a comment, Jerry.
Yeah.
Particularly on the last point, and this came up earlier, and it's always bothered me a little bit. So the Stevens Estate hosts things that are non-revenue generating for North Andover, holidays, for example, right? And how do I put it? We get no credit. We don't get any respect. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield. Somehow there's a value to that never seems to get recognized in any of the reviews of these operations. And I think it gets important, and it keeps getting lost. So maybe part of, we're going to wrap this slide deck up into a package, but maybe we can make a point about that in here, right? That, if the Stevens Estate didn't exist, North Andover would bear a certain expense to host some of these things, right? That are held there. So that's money we don't spend. Doesn't count as revenue, but it, you know what I mean? That has value, and I think gets lost in a lot of this. So,
Dave, if you don't mind me, do you mind me responding to that?
No, please.
I want to push back a little bit. I do think that the town makes note of the events that are held for the public. And I was just quickly trying to get back to the last year's budget document, but I'd be willing to bet, I'm not looking at it right now, but I'd be willing to bet that holidays and other public events were brought up. And it's part of the reason also why, I think the Stevens Estate Long-Term Advisory Committee and their process, when they were expounding on what type of organization they wanted to see potentially come in and manage the estate, they placed a high level of importance on public access and having public facing events and kind of maintaining that. So I think there's a recognized value in that, and maybe it could be more, or, I'm not trying to say that it's at the level of what this committee wants to see it be, but I just think I think there is that recognition out there.
Okay, it's not always apparent.
Limited recognition though, because it isn't actively promoted at the town level.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe it's not the 360-degree level of recognition that this board wanted. I just wanted the way it was being framed was that it just wasn't being recognized, and I just wanted to push back on that notion. That's all.
It's because there's no promotion at the town level.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. My viewpoint. I guess where I was going with that is I just feel like whenever I've been at, when I hear folks on the finance committee speak about us, I don't get that. I don't get the sense that they appreciate it. So I may be wrong about that, but
so Dave, can I interject?
Yeah.
I think what you're getting at is, sometimes this gets involved down to like a very, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a crass discussion of, does this asset make money or not, right?
Right.
But if we look at most of the things the town runs, library doesn't make money, Stevie's Pond doesn't make money, rec center doesn't make money, almost everything in town loses money, right? And it just happens to be that this thing is in an accounting function called an enterprise fund that makes a difference versus the other ones that are treated differently. So I think there's a way that, to your point of what I take from that is, there's a real social and economic value to what the estate does for free, right? So I go back to summer movies. If I took my kids to see a movie at a movie theater, I'd pay $7 or $8, maybe more, to go to it. But when it's the Stevens Estate and the library doing it, they're doing it for free, and that has some economic and societal value for people in the same way holidays does. So I think to your point, there's a lot of non-monetary things that the estate does for people that isn't really being given credit in this discussion when it's boiled down to, we did $300,000 worth of events and spent 250,000. Oh yeah, there's $50,000, surplus funds that can balance forward next year. Does that make sense? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, yeah. What I was going to suggest just is simple, is just that as part of our document here, Jerry, that we try to put a value on that as something, just to put it in black and white in front of people. Even if it is, as Andrew said, acknowledged in some way, it's not usually acknowledged with a number beside it. And I think for the people who might think otherwise, that it would be nice for them to see, that's whatever it is, $50,000 that was saved by having this asset. I think it might be nice to point that out. I'm just making that suggestion, Jerry.
How do we arrive at that?
Well, I wonder if,
How do we arrive at that number?
well,
And does it go in here or?
one easy way would be, if it wouldn't be too much of a burden, or if we could access Joanna's schedule and see how many town events there really were, and try to put a kind of, I don't want to make a lot of work, but
I'll help you with that, Jerry.
yeah, maybe, yeah, Robin, maybe you could look back at the last couple of years and see what's really happened there
Yeah.
that didn't generate revenue but consumed costs, right? Because we had a.
I was gonna add, sorry, Dave, but yeah, so the town events, you don't really expect to make any money off them, but the tent wouldn't be there without the private events that we have. So this year has actually given us the ability to offer the tent to the town, both for the schools, for the libraries, for the youth center, for Andrew's department. And I really understood that it's a non-monetary benefit that we have been providing this year because people needed outside spaces to meet. But yeah, finding the financial number to that is tough.
So this is Tom. I think I can kind of, in a previous life, I did some of this work putting monetary value on recreational and environmental assets. So I can dig up some of that stuff, and if some small group of us could talk offline, because there is a way that you could put a value in a dollar sense to how much time Joanna's doing with tours or doing with those types of events that, is an equivalent to that has a real monetary value to it. So there's ways to do that. I'm kind of rusty at it, but I think if we talk about it and I dig up some old books I have and some old papers I worked on, we can figure it out.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, if Robin, if you and Tom could get with Joanna and supply Jerry with some of that kind of information, it would be helpful for him, I think, in summarizing this. You have to do it fairly soon because he wants to get this to Andrew quickly. Go ahead, Jerry.
What is the time? Yeah.
Oh.
What is the time limit on that? What's the deadline?
Well, I know Andrew wanted.
Yeah.
Andrew originally wanted it by the middle of the month, right? Which would be the 15th, which is next week.
Okay. Yeah,
It is, but
this weekend.
I have a little bit of flexibility there, so no need to hold firm to that. But I mean, and we're gonna, to my earlier point, I'm gonna have to, set aside time with Joanna and the town manager to talk about the budget with the town accountant as well, probably sometime next week.
All right. I mean, and you can make that a fairly simple, and I don't think you need to make it a super sophisticated analysis. I mean, youth center is going to hold an event, $500. Just come up with some sort of reasonable number. That's not outrageous. That could be justified easily. It's going to be a number like that or greater. It's just to put a value. Maybe it's less than I think it is, but it would be interesting to be able to put a number like that out there for people to realize.
Okay.
There were.
So we got that one. So
Okay.
what about these other assumptions which tie right into this next table? but I want to go back to these assumptions around,
Yeah.
because I think if the limitation on attendance doesn't get lifted, in roughly this kind of late winter, early spring timeframe, then people aren't going to be booking events, big events. It'll be small stuff again, which is fine. I mean, it is what it is. But I just want to make sure that the board is comfortable with these assumptions, or we change them. There's nothing, it's an inexact science. So,
Yeah. I don't know. I'm I'm personally skeptical about that date.
well, what do you think it should be?
I don't know. Well, I'm thinking, I'm just listening to all the vaccine news out there, right? And I don't think the general public sees vaccines by then. I
I
think
think the latest one from the governor, which came out just this week, said maybe June or July for 100%
yeah.
general access.
So maybe that date should be June 1
I've been
Can
my
I make
assumption
this?
is May 1.
or May 1. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think this is where I go back to my earlier point that in the presentation, Jerry, what you and Joanne have done is really awesome, but it gets to this kind of what I think people are raising is you almost have to have three columns of COVID continues. This is what it looks like. COVID slightly better. I don't know what to call it, right? and fully back to normal, right? And kind of somehow we have to articulate those three options to people because they are really meaningful in terms of the policy levers that get pushed and pulled in terms of how many events and what type of events can happen, which drives the revenue, but then also drives the expenses, but also the expectations of, how much time is Joanna going to have to do the marketing and the prep work to get those events in for 2021. It's really, I mean, it's all, a lot of it's there, but it's a lot of variables, I guess.
Right, but I guess the budget's the budget. So and Andrew, I guess certainly there's different kind of scenarios of what the budget might look like, but there's only one version of the budget that's ultimately going to get reviewed by the town management, I'll say, town
Yeah, I
committee,
mean,
and
the only
presented.
correct, and on the only comparable sort of uncertain scenario that I can point to, which happened this past budget cycle, was what the town manager and ultimately what the town decided to endorse, which was the given the potential increase in spending by the schools for COVID-19 PPE and other issues, increase in technology costs and so on and so forth. And also with some uncertainty around, tax collections given COVID-19, the town passed a full budget as proposed, and then there was like this caveat about how the town would work with the school committee on, reviewing, revenues in the fall. So they had this MOU between the school committee and the town
Right.
to
Yeah.
navigate that. So I'm not suggesting that something like that is applicable here. I'm just explaining that's the only other scenario I can think of where you were given sort of we don't know what's going to happen this year sort of budget scenario, and you choose your own adventure type of thing. So I don't know if that's probably, I don't think that's applicable here though.
Yeah. I mean,
Is a board member allowed to be at that budget meeting or in that?
I can certainly inquire. I'm not personally opposed to it. I'll communicate with the town manager. I'll make that request known.
Yeah, I guess I come back to your point, Andrew. I think there's a difference as you're building a budget, right? And you're building a budget for the town manager's recommendations that are going to go to the board of selectmen, then they go to the finance committee, and ultimately they go to town town meeting for review and approval, right? So I do think there is some value in laying out, first and foremost, the maintenance budget for the estate, but then laying out some of those scenarios that Jerry's getting at in a way for people to understand what the choices are that are being made and what those levers are to move things, right? Because in a certain sense, it is a little bit applicable to what happened with the school budget, and even some things with the state budget, right? So it wasn't just schools, there were other revenues and other expenses in play in that MOU discussion. So I would really have us consider thinking through how do we articulate that. It's just my 2 cents.
Well, I think if they were lifted in March, then I think it's within the realm of possibility to be, this is kind of back to normal, right? Historical averages back to normal.
Yeah.
If it's May, we're not back to normal. That
Right.
not back to normal for fiscal 22, which means then these would change. The number of events would change.
Can I just interject there? So
Sure.
basically, if you look at the venue by the peak and the off-peak season and the capacities now in normal times in those seasons. So March is still in winter. April, we have some birthday parties and showers and things like that, but they're very small. They're like 25 to 50 people because we only have the inside of the house. We don't have the tent up yet. We typically get the tent up at the beginning of May where our capacity goes up to 250 people. So that's basically why my calculation is using May. But also it's not based on it is based on what we're seeing as the numbers now and based on Governor Baker's latest kind of forecast for vaccine coverage in the next, over the next 6 months.
So if the May date reflects.
Sorry, Jerry, can I just, sorry, just interrupt a second. What I meant to say was having a reduced capacity in the off season doesn't make any difference to us. We get the revenue on our smaller events. It would only have a significant impact if it got to May or later than May and we were still restricted. But like we've had in September and October, we can still have a 50% capacity event and make a 50% profit.
I see.
With a smaller event.
Can I ask you a question? With being, your reduced time in the spring, which is like the key booking season, do you think that's going to have an impact on your figures for next year?
Yeah, I do. January, well, New Year's and Valentine's and spring are peak booking seasons for weddings. So that's behind my major concern with the sales process is most of the inquiries come in. Basically, usually at this time between December and March, we fill in some of the open spaces and the shoulder dates in this next year, 2021. Plus, we'll be filling in a lot of the spaces in 2022 too. So while we still have time after that, after March, if the estate goes to quiet time, we'll still have plenty of time to book for 2022 weddings, but we'll lose that opportunity to fill in on those shorter term 6 month ahead weddings in 2021.
Okay, so because again, we're talking fiscal 22, so at least for this piece. So I guess what I would need to know is if it is
you would just say by
May,
July.
what's the impact of to this basically? How would this decrease basically? Because this is now later, and again, we don't need to answer right now, but
there's no difference because the fiscal year starts in July.
No, but this is about getting bookings to support
Okay.
this calendar. If COVID is still an issue and people are, well, I'm not going to book anything because not sure what it's going to look like. The later that this date gets, the worse, the more impact it's going to have on revenue, just like what happened this year, right?
But not,
It doesn't go down to zero,
it doesn't,
obviously,
we've
but it
still
goes
got
down. Just
yeah. I see it a little differently. I still see the opportunity to make the bookings if I'm in the right place at the right time. But I see the revenue generating opportunity, which is the event itself. May the 1st, June the 1st, we've got 2 potential good months of full occupancy with full revenues.
Hey, Joanna,
Yeah.
can I ask a question related to that, to the booking seasons? So as we think about transitioning from 21 to 22, right, and thinking about your amazing and excellent stewardship of the estate and track record, if when you talk about the bookings, right, and you think about the year, and I'm asking you to be play a little guessing game, I know, but how many other facilities similar to the Stevens estate are still actually up and operational right now? So if we do get to that May point and things improve, I guess how many of our equivalent, competitors or people that would use us are going to be are still operational today? And if they're not, that means those customers are potentially going to come seeking you, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of change opportunities with events that have changed, whether it was a ballroom in downtown Boston, etc. There are some less secure venues have been closing, and yes, those venues all have weddings booked for this year and next year. As we all know, the Stevens estate is in a much better position with our peak season outdoor capacity. The new normal will be with masks for at least a few years. It will be people being super cautious about the space they're in and being inside with other people. So there's that opportunity to increase, to do better than we have done in the past few years. But we do have other venues. So I'm actually a member of the North Shore Wedding Pros Network, which is about 30 other venues from Boston up the North Shore, Newburyport, down to like Westford, up to New Hampshire. Everybody's survived just about. There are some fortunate places that for example, Peabody Essex Museum in Salem. They have an indoor space, but they booked it a smaller wedding, and that's what we've been doing too. So smaller weddings. We would have. So I've had an inquiry this week just for a 5-person wedding in January, which is not a big revenue generator, but that's kind of where a lot of these other weddings are going. If they can't do the big weddings, they're having the smaller weddings. So everywhere I look at it, I see that we have opportunity. We're not indoors necessarily, and people see us as a good solution if they're planning for 2022 now. There's people who are more cautious. They think even if it's 2022, we still don't know 100%. An outside venue is something that you're not going to have to change in 2022.
Okay. So we could still be a little bit conservative on that, May steady state. There might be still some more pickup that we could see. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so I guess back to this, because this is pretty aggressive as we get into fiscal 22. So based on this discussion, I think it's a little bit too aggressive to build a budget around.
It's very optimistic.
Yeah, there is some upside, as Joanna, as you described, but I think from a budget perspective, yeah, it's, as I think what Jean just said, I think it's too optimistic.
Sadly, yes.
Okay. All right, so I guess Joanna, you and I need to kind of work a little bit more on
I was gonna say we can work
What-
on that offline.
what this would look like. Okay.
If I look at it just on the top level, I would say cut the weddings from 34 to 24, so that we've got one wedding a weekend during the peak season. And
Yeah,
see where
let's do it offline, so that, because I want to make sure that we get whatever the assumptions are. It just as you were starting to rattle off, which is good. I appreciate that. Just so we can get it down on paper, so then people can look at it and
Yeah.
understand it. So,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Okay. All right, and then so on the expenses side, I think it's a little bit more straightforward. So this is basically just taking information from the previous slides. I don't know if people can see it or not. I'm on slide 11, if anybody's following along. So longevity, I'm not really sure what this is. I just left it the same. But then the other question is overtime allowance. And I know, Joanna, you and I talked about this, but with the part-time folks, they really wouldn't be getting a lot of overtime, correct? Like more than 40 hours a week.
You got me. You're muted again, Joanna. I don't know why, but
So yeah, so no overtime at the Stevens estate.
Okay. No overtime needed?
Oh, believe me, in summer I can work 90 hours a week, but it's never been anything that has. I've taken it up the chain, but it's never ever gone anywhere, so I gave up.
Okay. All right. So and this just follows the same format as previous budgets. You kind of go back a few years and you pull all that data. Okay. Expenses. So I will say that Joanna and I did this kind of independently and came out very close. There's a couple of new costs, COVID-19 materials here, which we didn't have before, and liquor liability insurance. So there's a couple of new expenses here, 14,000 based on this budget that make this number.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in and say the liquor liability insurance is something that used to come out of the indirect expenses, so it's now back in our operating budget. That's why it's a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. And you see no indirects, as we already talked about. Transfer to capital, there's no transfer to capital because there's no capital projects. Get you basically a summary. And again, this kind of follows the same format as other prior budgets. So you see the operating expenses, on the top. I assume because the return to earnings is going to probably be pretty small. The interest income probably won't be zero, but maybe kind of small. But I had no way of knowing what this number is going to be. So I kind of left that alone. So that's a revenue, ties back to the revenue page, salaries and expenses. You put those two together. Again, prior year encumbrances for the 2021 budget, we didn't have any, so I just carry that over. Indirects is zero, transfer to capital is zero. So it actually gets you the lower expenses than what 2021 budget was. So, which is good.
yeah.
Part of that's driven by part-time employees. And maybe some small adjustments on the expense side, other expenses that I showed on slide 12. But anyway, that gets you to the 322 for expenses. So.
All right. Thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
I think that the smartest way for us to proceed here, right? Jerry, you're going to get back together with John to kind of tweak that for lack of a better word, forecast.
Yep.
Right.
The revenue thing. Yep.
Yep. And I don't believe, I guess I would entertain a motion to allow Jerry and Joanna the discretion to make those mods and then present this as our recommendation to Andrew, um, rather than try to meet again. I don't think we have time to do that. Or I don't really think it would be necessary. So somebody want to make that motion? Not that I'm suggesting it or anything.
Well, let me just ask a question. What about the piece of the other value, the non-revenue generating value? We want to add that in, right?
I'd like to. I mean, that's chairman's desire.
Okay. So let me make a motion to for the board to accept the fiscal 22 proposed budget with the caveat that I can work with Joanna to update the revenue side of the forecast and work with Tom and Robin on accounting for that non-revenue generating, put a dollar
Value.
against
Yeah.
a value, thank you,
Yeah. To just
against the
estimate,
non-revenue generating.
right. An estimated value of the non-revenue generating services we provide the town.
Yep. And then get the final budget to Andrew by the 16th,
Or, yeah.
middle of next week. That work, Andrew? Yep, by the 16th.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew, for the record, Andrew raised his thumb up. Some people are only listening. This comes from a career in radio. I have to picture things for people, right? They can't see. All right. I second that motion. Let's see. Robin? We have a motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Jean?
Aye.
Okay. Tom?
Aye.
Dave? Jerry? Aye. And Jerry?
Aye.
Very good. Passes. Okay. Next up, we have a report from Robin and the marketing committee.
Okay, holidays is underway. It has been scaled back based on the governor's new guidelines. The promotion went out. The press releases went to newspapers, to North Andover Patch. Joanna can probably provide the up-to-date booking reservations made for Santa, for doing mansion tours. But one of the side benefits of this is that the outdoors is decorated, will be decorated, and there will be what we call drive-bys, and you'll be able to drive through the estate and see the decorations from the safety of your own car. It's a wonderful family activity. And that's been the short-term focus for us to get holidays up and running. Also the website. The website launched about 3 weeks ago. We've had some issues with it this past week. Again, Joanna can fill you in on how well that is going to be fixed soon. But the marketing is going to change its focus. We're probably going to have a slowdown, but we're going to have to build some plans on what ifs for what was mentioned earlier, the March, perhaps the May, and then the June, July, and August. What will our activities be?
It's a the website that's down. I noticed I was trying to click around today to see what it looked like, and of course, all the links were dead. But is it supposed to be a .com? Is it supposed to be stevensestate.com, Joanna? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just give you an update on that. So we got the new website up and running 2 weeks ago, and our numbers were increasing in terms of viewership and everything. Yesterday around, I think it's around 1 o'clock, the website went down. Wasn't until a couple of hours later I realized the emails were down. I got a message out to the IT department, and Dave Broder has been working on it. So basically, it's a Google server issue, a DNS. Dave, do you know this? DNS?
Yeah. Domain name server. Yep.
Yeah, so basically, somewhere along the line, a number has changed in this DNS number for the website, and we now have we're on a ticket with Google support for somebody to look into that and try and fix what that problem is. But it's totally infuriating. Before the website went down yesterday, we'd received over 100 inquiries, over 50 inquiries for the house tours for holidays, over 46 inquiries for families for Santa over holidays. I'd received about half of those the week last week. Then I put 2 forms together on the website, so now they can go to the website to get reservations for both, and then the website goes down. So now people are trying to connect with us on Facebook and sending messenger inquiries to make reservations, and now we don't have certain times anymore because we're full. So there's a lot of challenges, and yes, if we just used Eventbrite or something like that, it would have been a lot easier. I wasn't aware of such limited functionality in Google Forms, etc. But the website being down kind of screwed everything up anyway.
Yeah.
But if you want, I can talk to you about holidays and give you a bit more of the background that Robin was talking about.
Yeah, just one quick question, which is really fast. I mean, so you have town IT put in an escalation ticket to Google, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, they're usually, in my experience, pretty good. So I would be surprised if you don't have some action on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
At least something. May not be completely fixed, but you should get some progress. Anyway, that kind of stuff, unfortunately, it does happen, and it's bad timing. So go on.
So yeah, and just to finish that off, I can send emails, but I'm not receiving any. So I normally get tons a day, so I'm looking for a big avalanche of them to come in whenever we get them. But yeah, so holidays. Thanks to Robin and thanks to Humara. They've been doing a great job, and some of our senior volunteers are pulling everything out too. So this year is going to be, we've pivoted many times. The latest pivot came in on Thursday of last week, where I had to call it and say, we're not having any kids activities. We got rid of the gingerbread and the card making, the Lego. We got rid of the outdoor stuff, and we turned the holidays open house inside out. So now, as Robin explained, we're going to be decorating the driveway on the way up. We're decorating the gatehouse. We're putting lights everywhere. And basically, we've still got reservations for open house tours, but we have the email addresses, and we have limited them to a certain number per period. We've still got reservations for Santa. Santa will be in the pergola with Mrs. Claus and their elf on Saturday and Sunday. So we've probably got about 50, 60 families that have reserved for Santa already, which is it's going to be a lot of happy kids. So the latest information on that is we are working with the Kindness Collaborative, Blanket Me, and the Senior Centre, and we are going to be accepting donations under the fir tree at the top of the drive for those 3 organizations, so we can make sure kids get gifts and people have food and people are warm over the holidays. So that's what the fir tree is, we're calling it a giving tree. So people have a reason to drive up the driveway, check out the beautiful decorations, and drive around. They'll be able to pick up a cookie, or we'll hand out a cookie in a bag to all the kids on the way back down, and that's holidays. So it's going to be really cool.
That's really nice, Joanna.
And isn't there a Hanukkah candle lighting coming up? I saw
I forgot about that. So Thursday night, so this is another piece of it. In order to, we've got some ice carvings, courtesy of Don, who usually gives us a beautiful ice carving every year from Brilliant Ice Sculptures. This year, he's actually giving us 2 smaller ice sculptures, but he's actually working with the rabbi of the temple in Andover, and he's giving us, he's putting together an ice carving of a menorah. So on Thursday night at 5 o'clock on the front lawn, we're going to have some blue lights, and there's going to be socially distanced 10 people plus a Zoom a little Zoom meeting. They're going to have a ceremony, so that's going to be really cool too.
And that's next Thursday, right?
Next Thursday, yeah.
I'll be there. I will be there for that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I just want to let you know, I saw that promoted on 2 different organizations I'm associated with. One was the Temple, and the other is I'm on the board of the Jewish Federation charity in Merrimack Valley, and it was in their listings as well. So you're getting some good promotions there.
That's awesome. That's great. And there's one more thing I forgot to mention. So our 1886 bedroom, which is now looking beautiful with its furniture, you may be receiving an invitation. So we're going to have a Zoom ribbon cutting, and it's going to be the Saturday night of holidays. Saturday holidays is between 10 and 2, and then at 5 o'clock till about 5:40, 6 o'clock, we've got a very select list of people that we're inviting, including everybody that's on my screen here. So it's a little ribbon cutting to open officially the 1886 bedroom, and we've actually got members of the Stevens family are coming up, Tyler and Gina, who are coming up from Long Island for holidays. They're going to be here. So yeah, that's going to be kind of a little, it's very small too. So we've managed to fit a lot of smaller little events within holidays this year. So inside out.
Very good. Okay. Do you want to, is there anything else that it's running into a long meeting here, so I don't mean to cut anybody off, but if you, is there anything else about operations you'd like to let us know about, Joanna?
No, the inquiries and bookings are good. We've just booked 2 weddings in the past 2 weeks. I've got about 12 to 14 proposals out, and 3 of them I know are 99.9% certain. So 2 for 2021, 2 for 2022. I've got a bat mitzvah for 2023. So yeah, busy. Nothing for Christmas. Winter, December, January, corporate parties are just dead in the water. So as we can be expected, you know.
Right.
Sometimes.
All right. Any questions for Joanna? Okay. Thank you. Not hearing any.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great job.
Yeah. All things considered, a very good job.
Thanks. Good, great distraction.
And I'll see you Thursday. Or Saturday. The Saturday you're referring to is 2 days from now or 9 days from now?
No, 9 days from now.
Okay.
Yeah, so you should be receiving an invitation too for that one.
Okay. I will try to make that as well. Number 8, we already talked about filling our vacant board seats because I talked about that up on the top. By the way, but another note on that for everybody: if you know anyone, I've said this before, but if you know anyone you think you'd like to encourage to join our board, have them by all means immediately get in touch with Laura Bates, the select board member, Laura Bates, or Phil DeCollegiero, and so they can be interviewed and be considered, right? Because I'm going to be, now that I know that that's happening, I'm going to be pestering them every week till they appoint people. So, you know, if you happen to know somebody you'd like, or somebody you'd like to recruit, please do it. Any new business? While you guys are thinking about that, let me double check my email to see if anybody in the public wished to comment. I don't see anything in either of mine.
To go back to an earlier conversation about sending our report to the Finance Committee.
Yes.
The other was the Planning Board.
Oh, the Planning Board or the North Andover Planning Board? Really?
Yes. We
Okay.
are supposed to be meeting with them as we are with the Finance Committee once a year.
Okay.
So the Planning Board should rightly get a copy of our report.
Okay. So Planning Board, and because that's my action, right? So Planning Board and Finance Committee. Okay. Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay. Next meeting date, I think we can wait till January, I'm pretty sure. Does anybody foresee a need to be meeting any sooner than that?
It's the CPA submission at the end of December, and we haven't even addressed it. But along with the capital request, the only thing that we could possibly be submitting this year is the David Neal. But since we haven't even started the other project with the restoration of the lighting, I would suggest we again hold that off till next year until we're in a better position.
Yeah. So that would be with respect to CPA. I'm sorry, with respect to
Yeah, CPA.
CPA. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure everybody's knocking on their door.
So Dave, just back on the meeting date, I would just suggest we try to do it, kind of the first half of January,
Okay.
just because of the potential slowdown
Yep.
at the estate starting
Right around.
sometime in early January.
Yeah.
Date to be finalized, but
Well, let me just informally ask people. I mean, I actually think this later start or 7 o'clock start would be ideal. Is actually better, right? It seemed like we got better turnout. Would you guys like to see me continue that? Everybody good? Yeah.
yeah, I think if we can keep it to a couple hours, I think that's.
Well, yeah, I know. But we knew this was going to be a long.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was 2 meetings in one, right? And and a budget discussion. So this one was doomed from the start.
Yeah.
Is that 7 o'clock time okay for you?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit better for us.
Okay.
With stuff that's going on.
Yeah, and those of us who are working for poor wages, which is many of us, probably all of us, are. It's probably better, less conflicts with work. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll try for a 7 o'clock time. I think it works better for me too. Okay, good. If not, I will certainly entertain a motion to adjourn and have a glass of wine. I mean, adjourn.
It's my bedtime.
Well,
Well, then wine will be helpful, right?
So Dave, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Jerry.
Jerry.
I heard Robin second it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. All right. Anyone opposed? Andrew, Donna, thank you very much. Jean, Robin, Tom, Jerry, thank you.